Hi, my name is Marty Shankman. This is Elvis, and this is a video series entitled Elvis Does Estate Planning. Hi, my name is Marty Shankman. This is Elvis, and this is part of a video series entitled Elvis Does Estate Planning. That's you. That's you. This particular segment is entitled How to Pick an Executor, Trustee, Agent, or Guardian. Probably the single most important step you take in all of your estate planning is selecting who are going to be the people or entities that manage these different critical functions for you. We're going to go through and talk about what each one does and explain, importantly, which is something different than some of the other segments if you listen to other ones, how ancillary decisions that you make can really help control what your agent, your guardian, your trustees can do. Critical subject. All these people are generically referred to as fiduciaries. They're people in a position of trust to help manage your estate. In case of an executor, also called a personal representative. The trustee that manages trusts if you set up trust, for example, a trust for your spouse or your kids under your will, an agent under your power of attorney, a guardian under your will for your children. Now, one of the things that you need to do is carefully think about who you're naming. You never want to name somebody out of obligation or because you feel you have to or because they're expecting you to. You name the people that you want to do the job right for you. Give careful consideration to naming a bank or a trust company. Unfortunately, for reasons I don't understand, a lot of banks and trust companies have been given generically a bad rep for what they do serving these positions. But the reality is they're professional, they're doing the job right, and they're not going to steal your money, and they'll do a lot better job managing your money. I know you may doubt that in light of what's going on in 2008 and 2009, but overall they will, than Uncle Joe or Aunt Jane. They're professionals and they do a great job. And too often they're not considered by people who really should consider them. Given the family dynamics of many families, the infighting, some of the disputes, using an institution, you take that emotional component out of these functions, which is terribly important and can have a huge benefit. Another thing to consider, which many people don't, is let's say you're even setting up a revocable trust to manage your assets as you get on in years or during a disability. You know, and you want to name your daughter. Your daughter may be the most brilliant financial planner in the country, but that doesn't mean she's not busy with her own personal, family, and business obligations. She may not really have the time, and she may be afraid to tell you she doesn't have the time, but it may be a huge imposition on her to take on that job. If you name a trust company along with your daughter, Elvis's paw is stuck. Let's get it unstuck. If you name a trust company along with your daughter, then, oh, Elvis, what did you do, son? You see, he didn't have the right trustee putting on his little outfit. If you name a trust company, they can take care of the bulk of the work, and your daughter can still be involved in co-managing with them. It's fairer to her. So it's not only about who you want to name, it's also what's fairer for them. Now, one of the things that you need to keep in mind is not just naming somebody and being done with it. The documents that you have prepared for you, a will, a trust, have very detailed provisions granting specific powers to each of these people. You want to go down, Guy? Okay. You want to coordinate and think through those powers relative to who you're naming. Most of these documents have broad indemnification provisions, a lot of the standard forms, saying in effect that you won't sue somebody because of something that's done that may not be optimal. But what level of indemnification do you want to provide? You may want a different level of indemnification for a family member than you do for an institution. Now, there's other considerations as well, too, of how you name these different people and how they function. What distribution provisions are you providing for? So, for example, let me explain that. Let's say you set up a trust for your spouse, maybe a second or third marriage, and ultimately you want money to go back to your kids. You could set up something called a uni-trust. How that would work is as follows. Let's say you put $1 million in trust for your spouse, and every year, 4% or 5% or whatever that dollar value is that the trust is worth on January 1, that's what your spouse gets paid over the course of the year, say in equal quarterly or monthly installments. If you set up a trust in that fashion, it's almost on autopilot what the distributions are. It may not matter so much who you pick as trustee because it's very mechanical. Contrast that with a trust, maybe the same trust with a uni-trust provision, but where you give the trustee discretion to distribute principal when they deem it appropriate. Now you've given a very broad discretion to the trustee when to distribute principal. If the trustee is somebody that's favorably disposed to your new spouse and not to your kids from a former marriage, that could be an unfair hardship to your kids while a benefit to the spouse. You want to pick somebody neutral if that power is there. It could be an accountant, it could be an attorney, it could be a family member or friend that you know will be neutral and do what's right for everybody. But do you know? And how do you know they won't be unduly influenced or pressured by a kid or a spouse to do something? Or you name an institution that will do mechanically whatever you define in the document without hesitation. So the distribution provisions are very important to consider when you're deciding who to name in these various fiduciary capacities. The powers and rights you give the trustee are very important. And if you coordinate all of these, you can really tailor whatever document you're looking at to really accomplish the best results. Let's take it one small step further. Documents over recent years have tended to get more sophisticated and tend to have more than just a simple arrangement of naming a person or an institution as a trustee. A sophisticated trust in today's climate may very well have a number of different fiduciaries. You may name a trustee that could be a bank. You may name a co-trustee that could be a family member. So the bank and the family member as co-trustees have to operate together. You may name somebody in a different capacity, which may or may not be a fiduciary capacity, called a trust protector. The trust protector may be given very limited but important rights to fire the bank and name a new bank, or perhaps to move your trust from one state to another state. That could be a huge and very important tax benefit in order to avoid taxation in a particular state. You may name a separate person or group of people called a distribution person or distribution committee to make distribution decisions. So you see, in today's climate, you can carve out different pieces of what traditionally had been the trustee's role into several different roles, and thereby better tailor your document to accomplish your personal goals. Another common arrangement is called a trust investment advisor who manages trust investments, perhaps in lieu of the trustee. We discussed that in another video clip on dynasty trust if you're interested in a little more information on the concept of a directed trust. So making decisions on who trustees should be, you really want to not only give careful thought to who you pick, but the combinations of people you pick. You want to be aware that if you have very unusual or complicated circumstances, you might use an array of different people working together to break these functions up, and that if you coordinate those with the distribution provisions and the rights in the document, you can really fine-tune it to accomplish your goals. It's not the simple who do you want to name as trustee or who do you want to name as executor, which is the question most people and even frankly most lawyers ask. You can go a lot further if it would help you accomplish your goals. Thank you for joining us.